My name is Harold Bennett. I am 67 years old, and for the past 8 months, I have been pretending that I do not know my son-in-law is trying to steal everything I have ever built. Last Saturday, I hosted a gathering at my lake house in Muskoka to celebrate selling Bennett Construction for $38 million. It was supposed to be a quiet weekend with family. Just before we signed the final trust documents, my son-in-law Marcus slid a different set of papers under my hand, thinking I was too old and too tired to notice the switch. He smiled at me. That practiced smile he reserves for business deals. I smiled back. What he did not know was that I had been waiting for exactly this moment. Before I tell you what happened when he realized I had already replaced those forged documents with the originals, let me know where you are watching from tonight. Drop your location in the comments. And please hit like and subscribe if you believe that the most dangerous thing you can do is underestimate a man who spent 40 years building with his hands. The morning light was coming through the tall windows of my lake house, scattering across Skeleton Lake like diamonds on black silk. I had built this place myself 30 years ago, when my daughter Christine was still a little girl collecting pine cones on the shore. Every beam, every stone in the fireplace, I had placed with my own hands. It was my sanctuary. Now, it was about to become my battlefield. I am Harold Bennett. I started Bennett Construction in 1982 with a pickup truck and a toolbox I borrowed from my father. By the time I sold it last month, we had built over 2,000 homes across Ontario, 3 shopping centers, and the new wing of Sunnybrook Hospital. $38 million. That was the number. It sat in my account like a weight, heavy with responsibility. My accountant Patricia had flown up from Toronto the night before. She was setting up her laptop at the dining table, her reading glasses perched on her nose. Beside her sat my lawyer, Daniel Okonkwo, a man I had trusted for 23 years. He was reviewing the trust documents that would secure my grandchildren's future. The back door opened, and I heard Marcus's voice before I saw him. Harold, what a beautiful morning. Christine and I brought fresh pastries from that bakery in Huntsville. You know the one. I turned to face my son-in-law. Marcus Webb was 41 years old, tall, handsome, in that way that made people trust him instantly. He worked in wealth management at one of the big banks downtown. He had married my daughter Christine 12 years ago, and for 11 of those years, I had genuinely liked him. Then, I started paying attention. Thank you, Marcus. That was thoughtful. Christine came in behind him, carrying a white bakery box. My daughter, she had her mother's eyes, the same warm brown that used to look at me with such love before Eleanor passed 6 years ago. Now those eyes looked tired, worried. She had lost weight. Morning, Dad. She kissed my cheek. Did you sleep well? Like a stone. I was lying. I had not slept more than 4 hours a night in 8 months. Not since the night I accidentally overheard a phone conversation that changed everything. Marcus was already at the dining table, shaking hands with Daniel, clapping him on the shoulder like they were old friends. They were not. Daniel told me later that he found Marcus's familiarity unsettling. So today's the big day, Marcus announced, pouring himself coffee from the carafe. The Bennett family trust finally gets signed and sealed. Must feel good, Harold, knowing your legacy is protected. It does, I said. It certainly does. He had no idea how protected it truly was. Let me take you back 8 months. It was a Wednesday evening in late October. I had just returned from a site visit to our berry project. Eleanor's favorite armchair still sat by the window, and sometimes I talked to her there, telling her about my day. That night, I was walking past Christine's old bedroom, which we had converted into a guest room, when I heard Marcus's voice through the wall. He thought I was still at the site. He thought he was alone. The old man is getting slower, Dad. You should see him sometimes. Forgets what he said 5 minutes ago. Patricia mentioned he mixed up 2 invoices last week. A pause. He was on the phone. I know. But we need to move carefully. The dementia diagnosis has to come from someone credible. Dr. Lawson says he can do the assessment, but he needs more documented incidents first. That's why I've been keeping notes. Every time Harold repeats himself, every time he seems confused, I've got a file. My blood turned to ice. The trust is the key. If we can get him to sign over power of attorney before anyone suspects, we control everything. Christine is too soft to question it. And once the medical diagnosis is official, we can manage his affairs. All 38 million. Another pause. 6 months, maybe 8. We need to wait until after the company's sale closes. Then we move, talk to Lawson again, make sure he understands what's at stake. I stood in that hallway for what felt like hours. My son-in-law, the man I had welcomed into my family, the man I had helped buy his first house. He was planning to steal my life's work by convincing the world I had lost my mind. I did not confront him that night. That would have been the old Harold, the Harold who solved problems with a raised voice and a firm handshake. Instead, I went downstairs, poured myself a whiskey, and began to plan. The next morning, I called my old friend George Macris. George had retired from the RCMP 5 years earlier, after 30 years of service. He now ran a small private investigation firm out of Mississauga, mostly corporate work. I told him everything. "Harold," he said, his voice grave, "this is serious. If what you're saying is true, we're talking about elder abuse, fraud, conspiracy. This isn't just a family dispute." "I know what it is, George. I need to know how deep it goes." He was silent for a moment. "Give me 2 weeks." It took him 3. What he found was worse than I imagined. Marcus's father, Victor Webb, was drowning in debt, bad investments, a failed restaurant venture in Vancouver, and a gambling habit that had cost him his marriage and nearly his house. He owed money to people who did not send polite collection letters. The family home in North Vancouver was mortgaged 3 times over. Victor needed money, a lot of it, quickly, and his son had access to a very wealthy father-in-law who was, conveniently, getting older. But that was just the beginning. George found Dr. Richard Lawson. He was a geriatric specialist who had lost his license in British Columbia 4 years ago for falsifying patient records. He had quietly relocated to Ontario, gotten recertified, and now ran a small practice in Brampton. In the past 3 years, he had provided cognitive assessments for 7 elderly patients who were subsequently declared mentally incompetent. In 5 of those cases, family members gained control of significant assets within months of the diagnosis. 2 of those patients later died under questionable circumstances. Marcus had found himself a professional, someone who knew how to make a healthy person look sick on paper. George also found the notary, a woman named Sandra Chen who worked out of a small office in Scarborough. She had a pristine reputation, but George discovered she was Victor Webb's cousin by marriage. She had notarized documents for 3 of Lawson's other patients. It was an operation, small, careful, and devastatingly effective. They targeted wealthy seniors with complicated family situations. They inserted themselves into positions of trust. And then they struck. I sat with this information for days. I could have gone to the police immediately. I could have confronted Marcus and thrown him out of my family. I could have warned Christine. I did none of those things, because I realized something. If I acted too soon, they would scatter. Marcus would claim misunderstanding. Lawson would destroy records. Sandra Chen would disappear. And Victor Webb would find another target, another family, another life to destroy. No, I needed them to commit. I needed them to think they had won. And then I needed to catch them in the act, with witnesses, with evidence that could not be denied. I needed to set a trap. The sale of Bennett Construction closed in March. $38 million, deposited into accounts that my lawyer Daniel had carefully structured. We had created a family trust, on paper at least, that would provide for my grandchildren's education, for Christine's security, for charitable donations to the organizations Eleanor had loved. What Marcus did not know was that these documents were decoys. The real trust, the one that actually controlled my assets, had been signed 3 months earlier in Daniel's office, witnessed by 2 retired judges and a Crown prosecutor. It was airtight, unbreakable, and completely invisible to my son-in-law. I also began to perform. I repeated myself in conversations. I pretended to forget names. I called Marcus by my late brother's name twice in 1 week. I asked Patricia the same question about quarterly earnings 3 times in a single meeting. Each time, I watched Marcus's eyes light up with barely concealed satisfaction. He was taking notes, just as he said he would, building his case. Let him build it, I thought. Let him build a castle on sand. In April, Marcus suggested I see a doctor. Just a routine checkup, Harold. You've been working so hard. Christine was concerned, but I waved her off cheerfully. I agreed to the appointment. Doctor Lawson's office was exactly as George had described it. Clean, professional, unremarkable, the perfect facade. Lawson was a small man with wire-rimmed glasses and a gentle voice. He asked me questions, standard cognitive assessments. I answered some correctly, others incorrectly. I hesitated where I should not have hesitated. I gave him exactly what he needed. After the appointment, I sat in my car in the parking lot and called George. He took the bait. Good. Now we wait. But we did not just wait. George had someone inside now. A young investigator named Priya Sharma, who had gotten a job as an administrative assistant in Lawson's practice. Over the next 2 months, she documented everything. Patient files, communications with Marcus, payments from Victor Webb that were disguised as consulting fees. We also found a voice. Her name was Margaret Olson. She was 74 years old, a retired school principal from Richmond Hill. 2 years ago, her nephew had worked with Lawson and Sandra Chen to have her declared incompetent. They had taken control of her accounts, sold her house, and moved her into a long-term care facility against her will. When George found her, she was living in a shared room with 3 other women, spending her days staring out a window at a parking lot. Her mind was perfectly sharp. She had been screaming the truth for 2 years, and no one had listened. I will testify, she told me when we met. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was iron. I will tell everyone what they did to me. You won't have to do it alone, I promised her. By June, we had everything. Recordings, documents, financial trails, testimony from 5 other victims who George had tracked down. Daniel had briefed a Crown prosecutor he trusted. The RCMP was ready to move. But we needed one final piece. We needed Marcus and Victor to attempt the crime in person, in front of witnesses who could not be dismissed. That is why I planned the gathering at the lake house. I told Marcus I wanted to finalize the family trust paperwork that weekend, sign everything properly, with Patricia and Daniel present, make it official and binding. A celebration of sorts, marking the end of my working life and the beginning of my legacy. He could barely contain his excitement. That's wonderful, Harold. Really wonderful. Should I invite Dad? He's been wanting to see the lake house. Of course, I said. Family should be together for these things. The trap was set. Saturday morning, the lake house was full. Patricia and Daniel at the dining table with their documents. Christine in the kitchen, making tea she did not want. Marcus moving through the space like he already owned it. And Victor Webb, my son-in-law's father, a man I had met perhaps 4 times in 12 years, suddenly acting like we were lifelong friends. Harold, what a place you've got here. That view, my God, must be worth a fortune. It's not about what it's worth, I said. It's about what it means. Victor did not understand the difference. I did not expect him to. At 10 o'clock, we gathered around the dining table. Daniel spread out the documents. Trust agreements, beneficiary designations, power of attorney forms. Standard estate planning for a man of my age and means. All right, Harold, Daniel said. Let's walk through everything one more time before you sign. I nodded, playing my role. The slightly confused elderly man, grateful to have professionals handling these complicated matters. And then Marcus made his move. Actually, Daniel, I have a quick question about the power of attorney section. Harold, do you mind if I take a look at that page? He reached across the table, and with a smooth motion, he slid a different set of papers under my hand. The switch was almost imperceptible. He had practiced it, but I had practiced too. Of course, Marcus. You know I trust your judgment on these financial things. I picked up the pen. I looked down at the documents, and I smiled. Because these were not the forged papers Marcus had planted. These were the originals. Daniel had switched them back while Marcus was pouring his coffee earlier. Marcus was so focused on his own sleight of hand that he missed ours entirely. I signed my name, Harold James Bennett. The same signature I had used for 40 years. There, I said. All done. Marcus was beaming. Victor was actually rubbing his hands together, a gesture so cartoonishly villainous I almost laughed. Excellent, Marcus said. Now we just need Patricia to notarize and we're all set. Actually, Patricia said, looking up from her laptop, we have one more item to review. She turned the screen toward the room. On it was a document, a medical assessment signed by Dr. Richard Lawson, recommending that Harold Bennett be evaluated for early onset dementia and suggesting that a family member be granted emergency power of attorney. Marcus's smile froze. Where did you get that? He asked, his voice suddenly tight. It was submitted to my office last week, Patricia said, along with a request to freeze Mr. Bennett's accounts pending cognitive evaluation. I thought it was strange, given that Harold had just passed a full assessment with his own physician, Dr. Sarah Huang at Mount Sinai. Perfectly clean bill of health. I watched Marcus's face cycle through emotions. Confusion, realization, fear. There must be some mistake, he started. There's no mistake, I said. My voice was different now. No more playing the befuddled old man. I know about Lawson, Marcus. I know about the fake assessments. I know about Sandra Chen and the notarized documents. I know about your father's debts. Victor stood up abruptly. Now wait just a minute. Sit down, Victor. He sat. I've known for 8 months, I continued. Since the night I heard you on the phone, planning how to have me declared incompetent. Every confused moment, every forgotten name, every repeated question. I was acting. I was giving you exactly what you needed to build your case, and you built it beautifully. Marcus's face had gone white. Harold, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. You saw an old man with money and no sons to protect him. You thought my daughter was too loyal to question her husband. You thought I was slowing down, losing my edge. You were wrong. The back door opened. George Makris walked in, followed by 2 RCMP officers in plain clothes. Marcus Webb, George said. Victor Webb, you are being detained for questioning regarding multiple counts of fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and elder abuse. Additional charges may be pending. Victor tried to run, a 71-year-old man trying to escape through my kitchen. One of the officers caught him before he made it 3 steps. Marcus did not run. He just stood there, staring at me with something that might have been respect if it wasn't buried under so much hatred. You planned this, he said. This whole weekend. I planned this for 8 months, I corrected. The weekend was just the finale. They let him out through the front door. But before he crossed the threshold, I called his name one more time. Marcus. He turned. The documents you planted? The ones you thought I signed? They were agreements to donate my entire estate to the Alzheimer's Society of Canada. Every penny. I was curious how long it would take you to notice. The look on his face was worth every sleepless night. Christine had not moved from the kitchen doorway. She was frozen, her face a mask of shock and dawning horror. Dad, she whispered. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I walked over to her. My daughter, the little girl who used to collect pine cones, the woman who had married a monster without ever seeing his true face. I know you didn't, I said. That's the only reason I didn't tell you. If you had known, he would have seen it in your face. You're too honest, Christine. It's the best thing about you. She collapsed into my arms, sobbing. I held her the way I used to hold her when she was small and the world had been unkind. What do I do now? She asked. You start over, I said. You and the kids, you'll stay here for a while. We'll figure out the rest together. In the weeks that followed, the full scope of Marcus's operation came to light. With the evidence George and Priya had gathered, the Crown prosecutor built an airtight case. Dr. Lawson was arrested at his practice in Brampton. Sandra Chen was picked up at Pearson Airport, trying to board a flight to Hong Kong. But the real justice came in the courtroom. Victor Webb went first. His trial lasted 3 days. The financial evidence was overwhelming. Bank records showing payments to Lawson. Emails discussing the Bennett project in coded language. testimony from two of his previous victims who had lost their life savings to the same scheme. The judge called it a calculated betrayal of the most vulnerable members of our society. Victor was sentenced to 7 years. Marcus's trial was longer. His lawyers tried everything. They claimed he was under his father's influence. They argued that he had never actually taken any money from me. They even suggested that I had entrapped him, that my elaborate deception constituted some form of improper conduct. The jury did not believe any of it. The recordings George had made were played in court. Marcus's voice, calm and confident, discussing how to manipulate my medical records, how to isolate me from Patricia and Daniel, how to convince Christine that her father was declining. But the most damaging testimony came from Margaret Olson. She took the stand on the third day, a small woman in a blue cardigan, her white hair neatly combed. She spoke for 2 hours about what they had done to her, how they had taken her home, her independence, her dignity, how she had spent 2 years trapped in a facility, screaming the truth to people who thought she was delusional. When she finished, several members of the jury were crying. Marcus was convicted on 6 counts: conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted fraud, elder abuse, forgery. The judge sentenced him to 12 years. I was in the courtroom when they read the verdict. I watched his face as each guilty landed like a blow. I felt no satisfaction, only exhaustion. 12 years in prison. His children would be adults by the time he got out. His marriage was over. His reputation was destroyed. But I did not do this for revenge. I did it because if I had not stopped him, he would have done it to someone else. Someone without my resources. Someone without George Macris. Someone who would have lost everything. The 38 million is not my legacy. My legacy is what I choose to do with it. 6 months after the trial ended, Daniel and I incorporated the Eleanor Bennett Foundation, named for my wife, dedicated to her memory. We are a legal defense fund for elderly Canadians facing financial exploitation by family members. We pay for lawyers, investigators, medical experts. We help people who have been declared incompetent challenge those rulings. We work with provincial authorities to identify patterns of abuse. In our first year, we helped 43 people. 43 Margarets who had been robbed, silenced, forgotten. We gave them lawyers. We gave them voices. We gave them back their lives. George runs our investigation division. Priya Sharma leads a team of researchers who identify potential victims before the damage is done. Daniel provides pro bono legal counsel to anyone who cannot afford representation. And Christine, my daughter, after the divorce was finalized, after the dust had settled, she came to me with an idea. I want to help, Dad. I don't know anything about law or investigations, but I know what it's like to miss the signs, to trust someone who's lying to your face. Maybe I can help other families see what I couldn't. She runs our family outreach program now. She speaks at community centers, seniors' residences, church groups. She tells her story, what she missed, what she learned. She has become something I never expected, a warrior. The grandchildren are adjusting. It has been hard for them, harder than I expected. Their father is in prison. Their world was shattered. But children are resilient, and we have made sure they know they are loved. I still go to the lake house most weekends. I sit on the dock in the mornings with my coffee, watching the mist rise off Skeleton Lake. Sometimes I talk to Eleanor, telling her about the foundation, about Christine, about the people we have helped. I think she would be proud. Last month, I received a letter. It was handwritten on lined paper, the kind you buy at the dollar store. The return address was a federal penitentiary in Kingston. It was from Marcus. I did not want to open it. Part of me wanted to throw it in the fire and never think about it again. But Eleanor always said that understanding was the first step to healing. So I sat down in her chair, and I read. It was not an apology. Not exactly. It was something stranger, a confession. He wrote about his father, about growing up with a man who saw every relationship as a transaction, about learning that love was something you performed to get what you wanted, about marrying Christine not because he loved her, but because she was an opportunity, about the weight of that deception carried for 12 years. He wrote about the moment in the lake house when he realized I had outmaneuvered him, He said he felt something he had never felt before: respect. He said he finally understood what it meant to build something real. "I don't expect forgiveness," he wrote. "I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I understand now what I tried to take from you. It wasn't money, it was meaning. And I'm sorry." I folded the letter and put it in my desk drawer. I do not know if I will ever forgive him. I do not know if forgiveness is even the right word for what happened between us. But I do know this: people can change. Even the worst of us can learn. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is leave the door open, just a crack. I am 67 years old. I built 2,000 homes, 3 shopping centers, and a hospital wing. I raised a daughter who became a warrior. I created a foundation that has given 43 people back their lives. And I am not done yet. Tomorrow, I have a meeting with a woman named Patricia Nguyen. She is 81 years old. Her grandson has hired a lawyer to have her declared mentally unfit. He wants control of her house, her savings, her RRSPs. He believes she is an easy target. He is about to learn that she is not alone. This story teaches us something important about trust and vigilance. It shows how the people closest to us can sometimes pose the greatest threat, and how isolation and assumed incompetence are the tools of predators. But it also shows something else. It shows that strength does not fade with age, that wisdom is a weapon, that the most dangerous person in any room is often the one everyone else has underestimated. My name is Harold Bennett. I am 67 years old, and if you are watching this because someone in your family is making you feel small, making you doubt yourself, making you think you are losing your mind, I want you to know something. You are not alone, and neither am I. Let me know in the comments. Do you think Harold's 8-month deception was justified, or did he go too far in protecting himself? I would love to hear your thoughts. And if you know someone who might need to hear this story, please share it with them. Sometimes a story is the first step toward finding help. Thank you for watching. Stay safe, stay sharp, and never let anyone tell you that your best days are behind you.